All right, you're all set.
All right, good evening, everyone. I hope you all got to go outside and enjoy this beautiful spring-like day. We are joining together for our strategic planning committee on 5/9/23 for the Avon Grove Charter School. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting into order. Did everyone get a chance to review the meeting minutes from April? Are there any questions, concerns, or corrections? All right. If not, we will accept them. And at this time, I'll pass it over to Brian.
So tonight we are going to have a short meeting. There's just two agenda items. So we are due for our 6-month renewal of our health and safety plan that we have to continue to update, revisit, and reapprove through the board for our federal programs and our ESSER funding, and then wanted to give an update on some of the strategic initiatives that we've been working on throughout this year. But would like to note that while tonight's agenda is a little bit light, in June we'll have, a little bit more of a longer agenda where we will be bringing to this meeting the initiatives that we want to undertake for next year, along with how those initiatives are aligning to our budget moving forward. So we're kind of starting to wrap up things for this year. We are looking at things that were on this year's initiatives that we want to carry over into next year, either that was a little ambitious and we didn't get to, or we are still in the middle of and want to carry over into next year's priorities, as well as what's new and going to go on into next year. And that'll be the majority of our work in June, as we then prepare for our annual meetings at the end of June that will lead us into the summer. So again, the first order of business was just to really raise awareness that we are at our next board meeting going to be bringing forth an updated health and safety plan. Nothing is really changing. There's no updates from the CDC that we would be doing regarding any COVID protocols. We're going to just basically be updating some language that would have been present in a mid-year presentation of the health and safety plan that we kind of have to change for a May presentation that will take us into the next school year. So really just doing some year updates, some vernacular that is going to be updated into it. But in terms of our COVID protocols, they're all staying as it was in the December approval of the plan. So this is going out to administration. Nurse Holly's taking a look at it just to verify and make sure that everything that's contained in it is still up to date and adhering to what our health department's protocols are, who really are just directing us back to whatever the CDC is saying in terms of COVID mitigation. But I think at this point, and again, I'm knocking on my desk, is that we are, maintaining and continuing operations as normal moving forward, as the government has sort of exited the pandemic emergency plan at the federal level as well. So that'll be coming up at the June meeting for board consideration and board approval as required by the state and the federal government. Any questions about that? Nurse Holly, I saw you were on here. Any updates that you have for the good of the order from the Nurses Association?
I anticipate we might get some updates after Thursday when they officially end the pandemic. My guess is they'll probably no longer want us to do any reporting, which was very minimal at this point. And basically what I've seen so far is the focus is just going to be on encouraging people to remain up to date on their vaccines if they choose to.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what this one was too. It was,
Yeah.
masks are optional. We encourage the following of the isolation protocols if you are positive. Wash your hands, and continue those normal mitigation measures.
Yep.
All right. And the second agenda item, again, was sort of just a quick cursory overview of the strategic plan initiatives from this year, and was going to kind of go through a couple of these as we are, and just note some pieces of information for these. And then I know that the directors are on here as well and are free to, and Mrs. Bishop and Mrs. Archer are on here as well. So again, free to chime in if I get to one of your department's initiatives and you want to give just a quick update on where we were at with that or any highlights. But again, I was going to go quick through this as it was a short agenda. So one of the first one's in curriculum and instruction, and this goal really has grown and is expanding to include all departments and all stakeholders within Avon Grove Charter Schools. Was our original goal of a portrait of a graduate, which is morphed into including a portrait of an AGCS staff member as well as a portrait of an AGCS parent. So we are currently working on that process. Mrs. Taylor is heading that up and working on more of a comprehensive matrix that's aligned to or PAC values, so that nomenclature is common and consistent through these portraits, as well as things that kids and staff members and parents are already used to hearing. So the goal is that I believe we're continuing to work through that over the summer, with sort of it aligning with Mrs. Bishop's theme going into next year as well. Anything to add, Ryan?
Nope, that covers it.
Great. So the next one was obviously maintaining and improving our academic achievement and college career readiness for students. So, and that really aligns to a lot of the initiatives within the document. How are we, and what programs and supports are we having in place that address academic achievement and growth of our students? And I'll kind of loop back to that with a couple of the next bullet items. The next was the master schedule. So we are through that sort of operational and structural process, and now have we talked about this at a number of our meetings here. So have sort of the structure that we're looking to put into place starting next year. That's will act as sort of like an easing into it over the next couple years, and then will allow for an expansion of our student enrollment and programming as we move into the new building that's proposed for the State Road campus. And then again, we have teacher training coming up here at the end of the year, and then that teacher training will continue through next year, focusing on the brain science around teaching in longer blocks of time, as well as pedagogical practices that support that, and so social emotional practices and awareness practices that we can make sure that we embed within our classroom environment and our classroom instruction to support students across the board. We are in the process of and actually have proposed in next year's budget an update to our middle school and high school curricular materials for the English department. So the board will see in the budget 2 line items that will be new: 6 through 10, and then 11th and 12th grade English books and curricular materials from 2 different vendors. So that we're wrapping up. And that goal again is part of our curriculum development and management plan. That's a cyclical process, and then we'll be moving on to the next department's needs going into next year. So that'll show up on this. We along with the English department was also looking at our K-8 math and science resources, and those sort of timelines and plans have been updated as well. And then Mrs. Weaver, are we still? I'm sorry, I should have asked you this before. With music and PE for their standard alignment, or was that put on hold because of COVID with our timelines from our original cyclical plan?
No, Kim's been able to chip away at both of those
Okay.
frameworks. So I would anticipate later this summer, close to completion.
Great. Our K-8 ELA assessments, as well as math assessments, and we've actually expanded it to include some other departments have come on board in administering performance, their common assessments, modular assessments, and some other exams within Performance Matters, which is a PowerSchool product for assessment alignment and assessment delivery. So we're moving through that. We'll be done that for the year, and then look at continuing to examine how we leverage that system in terms of data reporting, data access for our teachers to make informed decision-making about their instructional practices and student grouping moving forward. Mrs. Weaver, do you want to take instructional coaching and your work with that throughout the year with Mrs. Lindenbaum?
Sure. So just to bring everyone up to speed, we created the position of instructional coach last school year as a means to help staff in a way that is not evaluative, because we understand that the perception of, instructional staff towards admin, can be very much supervisor, teacher role. And sometimes the feedback isn't, relayed or received in a way that either maybe party wants. So having an instructional coach kind of be that person who, is a strong teacher and has good relationships with staff to be able to have ongoing instructional conversations is something that, we had talked about for years, and we've been thankful that we were able to put the position into place last year. So the goal of last year with Mrs. Lindenbaum was to build relationships, kind of get a handle on programming and things like that at the State Road campus. And then this year, she started working on what's called the impact cycle. So essentially, it's a 6-week coaching cycle that's very much driven by the teachers, where they're coming up with their own goals or their own initiatives or instructional strategies that they want to work on. And Beth Ann's role is to really facilitate and help that. So we've been spending this year really ironing out what that looks like. And then kind of talking about what future professional development looks like, especially in terms of teacher induction, because we recognize that it's super important for new hires, whether they're new to the profession or new to our school, have a solid amount of support from an operational instructional perspective. So Beth Ann's been instrumental in helping us come up with meaningful and creative ways to meet all the PDE requirements for teacher induction, but also deliver it in a way that is effective and speaks to the needs of our new hires. So we've been kind of morphing those two worlds together, the coaching cycle and an induction plan and professional development plan. So I would say also by probably the middle of summer, end of the summer, at the latest, we'll have the full-fledged plan worked out for the upcoming school year.
Great, thank you. The last two items that are still in progress under the areas of other focus was we're still working on trying to identify and weave into some of our high school elective classes opportunities to obtain industry-based credentialing and take some industry-based credentialing exams as part of students' elective classwork. So that work is ongoing. And then in June, the board will also be receiving our 23-24 flexible instructional day application This is the last year of our 3-year approval, so we need to resubmit our application for the next 3-year window, and that'll be coming up in June. The next area was student services and wellness, and then Mrs. Taylor, if you want to take the first two, which I know you work with a lot of regarding our SEL work and PBIS.
Yep. So this year our focus was on enhancing SEL practices for K-12, specifically on promoting SEL for students. Last year, the focus was on professional development for staff. So really focusing on what those SEL standards were, the 5 competencies through CASEL. And then this year, how are we then taking those standards and implementing them into practice? So we really have targeted our half days this year as a focus of direct instruction time integrated with activities for students. And there are, I have to shout out the coaches that plan these. I know that Megan's on here, Miss Heaps, Miss Morris, Ms. Zabo, the counselors, they all did an amazing job of planning these half days, and it was a ton of work. So huge props to them, and the kids really enjoyed them. And so each time that we did it, we learned a little bit. And so the last time I feel was one of the most successful runs. So we're looking forward to doing that again next year. We got a lot of feedback from students, from staff along the way. So we'll continue to update those as we go and work on that direct instruction for the half days. We're also working on a scope and sequence for SEL instruction that integrates PBIS as well. So utilizing multiple curricular resources to map out direct instruction lessons for during morning meeting time. So the framework for that is almost finished, and we'll continue that into next year. And then for next year, we'll also be looking at adding advisory time to incorporate some of those things for middle school and high school. Any questions on the SEL piece? No? Okay. And then PBIS Tier 2, we focused really this year on check in, check out, and starting with that as an intervention for our students who needed more support than what we were or they needed support in addition to what they were receiving at the universal level. So we started with check in, check out as a Tier 2 intervention, and we're looking at expanding that into next year. So we did meet fidelity at Tier 2, which is amazing, but we want to continue to focus on Tier 2 next year by expanding our options of interventions aligned to the functions of students' behavior. So we are piloting a process with K-6. We're up to about 8 different Tier 2 interventions that we're monitoring and tracking with fidelity, and then we'll look at expanding that into next year.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next was we had talked a while ago about working with our teachers to develop some course feedback opportunities for students. That's a goal that we didn't get to this year, and it's probably something that will transfer over to next year. But the idea again is that students will be able to give our teachers some meaningful feedback about their courses in end of course assessment feedback form. Non-evaluative just would be additional data for our teachers from and allowing students to have their voice heard in what they liked about the class, how was their homework load, what would other students that are coming into the class behind them, what should they know, so to kind of give that feedback to teachers from the student's voice. We also spent time this year working on streamlining our registration and enrollment process. We implemented Power School Enrollment full registration feature this year for our new lottery system and registration. So we are whittling down the amount of paper that we process and working to try to increase the efficiency and speed at which that our families are able to complete the registration process. And I'm going to come back to the L program. That kind of goes in tandem with our grade level transition and orientation programs. That has been a conversation between our principals of how our third graders coming up to fourth grade, how are sixth graders coming up to seven, how are eighth coming up to ninth, and what transitional opportunities and knowledge do students really need to have in order to be successful through those different transition periods. Caitlin, why don't, if you're able to jump on, go next. I think we're still waiting on our monitoring information, but you can share a little bit about the in progress and hope to soon be closed out special ed items.
Sure. So monitoring the school special education compliance. So anyone who's been to any of the board meetings or heard me talk at all this year knew that we were going through our cyclical monitoring audit. It happens once every 6 years. Everything has been submitted. They came, they did their on-site everything. And it's my understanding that our auditor through the Bureau of Special Ed then submits it to the state. And then there's a cohort of people that review it before it gets sent back to us as a finalized document. So we're just waiting on the finalized results. We had an exit interview and meeting, so I'm aware of everything that is there, but it's easier to have the finalized document before we get too excited about anything. And so that is the monitoring, the special education compliance. And then we've been really updating our entrance and exit criteria for the special ed continuum of services. So our supplemental learning support program is growing, and our emotional support program is growing as well. So really coming up with the rubrics to determine what constitutes eligibility for entering, and then at what point students are able to exit because they've met the exit criteria as well. So we've been really working on that. The harder of the two is the emotional support criteria, but we are almost finished.
Great. And then Jen, if I know we had talked about also having it in tandem with that the program audit for special education to have a look at our services and supports for our L students. This is something that happens through our federal programs reviews, but is also an area of the school's support program that we were looking at trying to evaluate and look at as an area for us to start to target for both identifying, what are we doing well, how are our L students progressing through that process, and then what might we need to do in addition to continue to help them make the gains that they need and see progress. Anything to add, Jen?
Nope, I'm good. Thanks.
Jumping down to facilities, these facility goals, we're working on trying to make sure that we continue to implement our school-wide facilities plan. So we have a comprehensive facilities maintenance schedule that the facilities department is always trying to maintain and make sure that we are addressing the both planned and unplanned facility needs at both campuses. We are working with Ms. Simpkins on ensuring that we are continuing to provide our safety and security professional development training for our staff. We have our intruder drills coming up here soon, and that's part of that training process, is making sure that in coordination with her and local PSP that we are and Department of Education requirements that we are maintaining all the training opportunities and requirements that we have for our staff. Mrs. Bishop talks a lot about our academic building and the capital project that goes along with that. But facilities, along with our business office, have been working throughout the year to work with our architects and all of the facility-based individuals who are part of that planning process, as well as administration and Ms. Archer in the business office. And then we are this year implemented at those school buildings new fob key access, as well as some new entrance procedures. That's going to get actually another update with us moving from our Raptor visitor and volunteer management system to Navigate 360. So we're going to actually be doing more training on entrance procedures, but our staff were informed of and trained on the new procedures for them to get in with our keyless fob-based entry system into both buildings. Anyone have anything to add for facilities? I know there's some people on here who are involved in all that. All right. Personnel, Mrs. Bowers and the Human Resources Department, their goals, and these are probably going to be similar ones going into next year with some new ones. Obviously, always trying to hire and retain high quality staff members. There were a lot of things that went on this year, both with Human Resources Department and Mrs. Weaver and the principals, to make sure that our name is out there, that we are working to do right by the staff that we have, as well as be attractive and attract new staff members for vacancies that we are projecting going into next year. So we had open houses. We had a hiring mixer in Westchester. We've had a number of initiatives to make sure that the staff that are currently AGCS members, staff members, understand and realize how valued they are. This week is Teacher Appreciation and Staff Appreciation Week, so there is a lot of things going on at both buildings. So again, that is always a goal of Human Resources Department, to hire and maintain our staff. They're also in the process of looking at voluntary group insurance plans for post-retirement and post-retirement options, medical plans for post-retirement options, as well as they have really spent some time, Ms. Bowers, Ms. Lowry, and working with Ms. Phillips to hone on the human resources portion of our webpage, so that information about our benefits plan, opportunities for open positions, all that information is easily accessible and is out there for prospective employees to access and move through that process. And the Human Resources Department also attended some virtual and in-person job fairs throughout the year, again, to promote the school, to get our name out there, to educate people on charter schools and share our story. Next up for finance. Again, two big projects this year for the business office was continuing the transition to Sage Intact, or the new financial accounting system, as well as Paramount Workplace, which is our new purchase order and procurement system. So those were two heavy lifts for the business office to move to two new platforms this year, again, in the hopes of increasing the efficiency of the business office as well as the school at large. And then there has been a lot of time spent in adjacent to the facilities work that's being done for the building project, is the financial work that has to be done for the building project. And Ms. Archer and the business office and Ms. Bishop working, and the board working with the financial planner to secure the funding needed to be able to make that building planning come to fruition. For technology, there were a lot of updates that went on this summer in terms of infrastructure and hardware. We provided, this is more in the IT department, did new cable upgrades throughout the State Road campus, as well as updated the servers that were needed to be updated at the Early Learning Center. They launched, for better or for worse, two-factor authentication for our staff and our systems. That really has to do with a lot of information that's coming out regarding data security and cybersecurity. So there's actually going to be a board policy update coming soon. There's been new federal legislation related to data breach information and cybersecurity, and a lot of the work with regards to the two-factor authentication and items coming from the technology department this year has been really focused on ensuring that our data is secure and that we have proper protocols in place to secure, maintain that privacy, and then systems and processes to follow if there were ever to be a data breach. And then we have an update, 3-year update coming for our one-to-one technology plan. And I had already mentioned moving to Navigate 360 over the summer. So that new security process for visitors and volunteers will begin at the beginning of next school year. From communication standpoint, I'm waiting on the final a meeting and the final report from the CCIU on our communications audit review. So that should be done here this month, and then we will be able to present to the board as well as use that information to set some initiatives moving forward based on their recommendations, as well as what they see as work we need to do in terms of our brand auditing and our brand usage going forward into the future. We've spent some time this year making sure that we are being aware of the diversity within our school community, and making sure that we are celebrating that and acknowledging that diversity through our communication methods, email, social media. You will have seen an expansion of posts and celebrations related to diverse backgrounds and cultural holidays throughout this school year. From a policy standpoint, we spent the year moving through a lot of the board doc policies. We're moving into, with next year being the focus of our human resources and our employee policies, but the majority of all of the other policy binders, our programs, our student policies, our operations, our finance, our community policies, most of those have all been updated based on the board doc based templates and transitioned away from our older policies in adherence with updates to school code, federal and state statutes and laws. So we moved through a lot of policies this year, and that was a major goal to try to make sure that we are up to date with things. And next year we'll be moving into our employee policies. And then either Caitlin or Ryan, if you want to talk a minute just about React Club, because I know that was something that came back this year.
Yeah. Sure. So the React Club is a high school club for students. It pairs students with disabilities and social barriers with students that typically either are regular ed or special ed students who do not have social barriers. And they have after school events. They meet at lunch, and shout out to Maggie Johnson and ELC for the holiday show. Their apparel sales was a fundraiser for the React Club, and we super appreciate that. And again, shout out to them for helping us with that initiative.
Great, thank you. And the last two, in terms of student activities, was the goal of our after school childcare program and extending that into additional summer opportunities, which we did through some ESSER funding as well with Summer Learning Academy, which will be going into this summer. And then we are launching at the beginning of next school year a new process for us to track and maintain and collect information on on student activities in our middle school and high school. So making sure that we have a good and accurate accounting of which students are participating in what extracurricular and co-curricular and athletic activities, so that information can be used to sort of drive some additional conversations moving forward of what do we offer, what don't we offer, who's participating, who's not participating in our school community beyond just the academics. And for those who are not participating, trying to get at the why. Is it because we don't offer something? Do we need to connect with those students and have their voice heard on what types of clubs or activities they might be interested in joining, so that we can continue to work on students developing a sense of identity at the school and connection with the school beyond just the bell to bell school day of a normal academic grind. So that is a lot of stuff that we had focused on and for this school year and accomplished, and some things again are going into the summer still and may go into next year. But that was a lot of major initiatives that we tried to undertake for this year. Like I said, for our June meeting, there will be an update for what we are planning on focusing on into next year, along with how that aligns to our budget and some of the items that the board will see and the public will see in our budget that would be voted on at an upcoming board meeting. So you'll see that alignment as well. Any questions?
Brian,
Comments?
I would just ask that, as we go into June and prioritize some of our strategic goals for next year, since we have teachers or parents on the line, based on this feedback, is there anything that you would like to see more as our priority or more information on through the strategic planning? Like, this is your time to really ask questions or give some kind of feedback on goals you might not see that we're working on that you're looking for us as a school to do in the future. So, I'd like to hear some feedback if anybody has anything additional or would like to see additional than what Brian has presented and the team. If not, I'm just going to assume we're doing a great job and we'll just keep focusing on what we're focusing on.
I was going to say that I think it's a extremely thorough overview of multiple areas. And I think that was extremely good information to have. I appreciate all the collecting and coming together of all that. Thank you.
Great. Then the only other thing is to announce that our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, June 13th. And again, that will probably be a little bit lengthier of an email or of an agenda to go over the draft initiatives that would be being presented to the board for the next academic year. And you would adjourn us then.
I'm coming. All right. So with everything said and done, this meeting can be adjourned. Thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.